traditional school schedule, year-round school schedule, Sabbath homeschool schedule. We've kind of tried a little bit of everything, but here's how we're going to tackle our homeschool schedule this year. If you're new here, I'm Rian, a Christ-following wife and a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Here we talk all things homeschool, and we will learn together how to use our roles as wife, mom, teacher, and homemaker in order to glorify God. So I shared before that I'm using the Well-Planned Day homeschool planner. I've used this now for I think 4 years, but sadly this will probably be my last year. That is because they've taken out all of the biblical elements out of this. There used to be a scripture a day. There used to be, at the beginning of the day, this was the Bible section. Now they've changed it to family focus, which, in the grand scheme of things is not a big deal, but I really liked the Christian aspect of it. And so we will probably try something else out next year. I didn't realize all these changes had taken place until I had already ordered this. So we'll just stick with it this year since I already paid for it. But we're definitely going to try something out different this year. That being said, I'm going to show you how I use this and how I schedule out a year in advance. Now, I'm not talking about planning every lesson for every day for the next year, but I'm going to show you, how we decide how many days we're going to do and what days we're going to take off and all of that. So we use the Sabbath method, which is about 6 weeks on, 1 week off. So here I'm putting in where I want to start school right after Labor Day. And then I will just start blocking off those holidays that I know we are going to want to take off. So we take off 2 weeks at Christmas, 1 week for Thanksgiving. And then I just kind of go through and start counting approximately 6 weeks, and then we take a week off. Of course, it gets messed up kind of around November, December with the holidays, but then we can dive right back into the 6 weeks, 1 week schedule. Also, I only do 4 days a week, which that's typically because 1 day is reserved for co-op. So our school year definitely will go into June this year. A lot of our curriculum will wrap up the end of May, but there will be some like our Sunlight that will continue into June, but that's fine because by then we're typically only doing half days anyway. So then I go through and I start filling out all of our co-op days. And so I will square those off, and then the circles will be our field trip days. So here in Missouri, we don't have to count days. So some states I know do 170, 180 days, somewhere around there. We have to do 1,000 hours. So our co-op days count for our hours also. So that kind of helps the fact that I do a 4-day school week. And I've been homeschooling for several years now, and we've never not gotten in our hours doing our 4-day school week. So it should end up being just fine. So now I'm just counting up to see how many weeks we have approximately, and then I will come through with my highlighter and I will highlight the weeks that we actually plan to do school. And then occasionally we will come on a Monday where we will not have co-op, and those will just kind of be made a makeup day so that if we have gotten behind on anything, then we will just have that day to kind of catch up maybe. But typically we just, if I see that we're kind of behind, we just double down and maybe just double up on one subject, and then the next day double up on another, and it usually evens itself out in the end anyway. So then once we kind of get into June, then those will kind of be like our extra weeks. That's when we will be finishing up things that are more the 36-week subjects like science and math. Our math isn't a full 36 weeks, but it gets a lot closer. So we're coming up to about 128 days or 32 weeks, which for most curriculum, that is more than enough time. And I know 128 days doesn't really seem like much, but we do pretty long school days. And again, those co-op days count for our 1,000 hours too. So that kind of makes up for it. Now I'm going through and just kind of highlighting days that are kind of an end of our 6 weeks. And that just sets me some benchmarks that I can look at, and I can say, okay, by this date, I want to have this much done. By this date, I want to have this much done. And that really helps in our planning process. So just an example of how this works, I'm checking out our math right now for my 6th grader. I know at the beginning of the year, we're going to kind of go through 1 through 10 in the first test and first investigation pretty quickly in that first week because he's still finishing up math from last year right now, so we're not going to need much review. But then I will add up the number of lessons, the number of tests, and the number of investigations to see how many different school days we need for math. And then I will go through and kind of plug that into how many lessons we need to do in a week and about how long it's going to take us. So here I'm seeing we're going to have 110 actual lessons, we're going to have 11 investigations, and 22 tests after that first week of review. So that will equal about 132 days of math total. So then I can kind of plug that in. And like I said, since we only have 128 days planned, we're going to be going into the green area over there in June, but only by a week or two. So then I'll look back at that day that I highlighted for our first kind of end of 6 weeks, which was going to land on October 14th. And so then I'll circle that, and then I'll write over on the side, hey, this is kind of where we want to be for each subject. And so if we get behind, we can catch up. If we get ahead, then we can kind of slow down and know, okay, we just have to meet this benchmark by this date. So I know that by October 14th, he just needs to have gone through lesson 30 in his math, taken test number 5, and done investigation 3. So for some of those more simple subjects, like my preschooler's handwriting, I see that there are 144 pages. And so then I will just go and look and see, okay, we have about 128 days, 144 pages, so we need to do about 4 to 5 a week. Therefore, I'd like to be about at page 24 by the end of that first 6 weeks. And then I know for sure that sunlight is 36 weeks, so I know that by the end of that first 6 weeks, I would like to be through 6 weeks of our sunlight. So homeschooling in Missouri is in a way a little more challenging as far as figuring out how much school you need to do, but really it's just a different way of doing it. So we still have the freedom to homeschool year round or to do a traditional homeschool year, whatever we want to do. But you can kind of play with your hours and just kind of figure out what works for you. And what kind of homeschool planning do you do? Do you do year round? Are you more of a sabbatical type planner? What works for you guys? Talk to you next time. Traditional homeschool.